Well, Nompo, indeed, much of the proceedings this morning when we kicked off at 10 o'clock were about this letter dated the 1st of November by Kelly Khumalo's lawyer, Magdalene Moonsamy, in which she wanted to return to this court in a watching brief on behalf of her client and also wanted access to the court proceedings, the record, as well as the transcripts of the bail application, you would recall, for accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi. So that letter, Judge Mamela earlier indicating was addressed to his secretary. Court had basically taken a break much earlier on during the proceedings this morning to allow for Judge Mamela to read that letter. When we returned, the state said that it was opposing that application by Magdalene Moonsamy, and basically that they believe that there was no basis for what was being laid before this court for Magdalene Moonsamy to return to this court on a watching brief on behalf of a client. You would recall that Judge Mamela had previously said when Magdalene Moonsamy was in this particular court, the last time, the very same instance had been argued in which Judge Mamela felt that she did not need to be here simply on the basis that her client could come to this court and testify. Let's take a listen to what Advocate George Baloy for the state had to argue.
The concern we have now is that if witnesses testify before the client of the watching brief might be expected to express upon them, that system would not have been pure. I think we will discuss about the situation after the client of the watching brief will have testified, whether there will be a need to excuse the watching brief. And we attach the relevant portion of the record. We make the submission, my lord, that since the time when the court made this ruling until now, nothing has changed, my lord, that would necessitate this court to revisit the matter.
Meanwhile, the legal representative representing accused 1 to 4, Timothy Tabane, basically argued that Magdalene Moonsamy's request for transcripts were unethical, he says, and also lambasted her for not following procedure. Let's take a listen.
I do confirm that I will stand with the decision of the court on the previous occasion regarding this matter. The counsel were talking about before the court is a senior person, and if he's not happy with the decision of the court, she knows what to do procedurally, not to directly write a letter to the Honorable Court where there is other parties involved. Unlike there is an ex parte application. If there is other parties involved, it's something else. She's not supposed to do that ethically.
Advocate Zandile Mshorolo for accused number 5 was up next, and she basically said that Kelly Khumalo was not entitled to have her lawyer inside this court on a watching brief. She also said that there would be no prejudice that would be faced by Kelly Khumalo if Magdalene Moonsamy is not allowed inside this court. Let's take a listen to what her argument was.
My lord, the application is opposed by the defense for accused number 5 to have a watching brief for Ms. Kelly Khumalo inside this court.
Right, and shortly after the decision by Judge Mamela, he didn't spend much time, Nompu, on his decision, saying that this court had basically made a ruling on this particular matter. So a second time now denying Magdalene Moonsamy presence inside this court on a watching brief on behalf of her client. Shortly after that was the tea break. When we returned, we had the state's third witness, Senzo Meyiwa's close friend, Tumelo Madlala, was back on the stand for cross-examination. The legal representative for accused 1 to 4, Timothy Tobane, continues his cross-examination of Madlala, but essentially what has come out of cross-examination thus far is that Madlala is adamant that accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi, who he pointed out inside this court as one of the intruders inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. He reiterates that it wasn't Ntanzi that was pinned against the wall by Senzo Meyiwa before the gunshot had gone off. And he also basically says he was quizzed or in cross-examination he was asked about why in his statements and even in his testimony he doesn't give exact times of certain incidents. For example, whether when the intruders entered the house, the soccer match which he referred to of Manchester United and Chelsea was still on when the intruders came in, or the match was over. When did he leave KwaZulu-Natal to Gauteng to come and visit Senzo Meyiwa after he'd received a call to come and visit him here? The defense seems to question why Madlala does not have specific times about when any of these things had taken place. But Madlala, in his defense, says that this had happened quite a while ago. He cannot give exact time frames in terms of when some of these incidents had taken place. Cross-examination continues at 2 o'clock.